Hi friends, I'm Gwen.
And I'm Jacqueline. Welcome to Talk Bookish to Me,
the podcast where friends get together and talk about books.
Happy Monday, bookworms. Today we're discussing Grown by Tiffany D. Jackson, and we have a special guest. Not only did Gwen and I read Grown, but we invited our friend Jessie to read and discuss it with us, and we have her with us today. In the details of today's episode, we'll have links to Jessie's social media, the author's website, and a link for you to purchase the book if you'd like.
Jessie, go ahead and introduce yourself, where our listeners can find you.
Well, my name is Jessie, and my booktube channel is Reading with Jess. And you can also find me on Instagram. It's at readingwithjess_.
Before we get started with our discussion, I wanted to go ahead and let you guys know about the author and a little brief synopsis of the book that we read today. So the author, Tiffany D. Jackson, is the critically acclaimed author of several YA novels, including the Coretta Scott King, John Steptoe New Talent Award-winning Monday's Not Coming, the NAACP Image Award nominated Allegedly, Let Me Hear a Rhyme, and of course the book we're discussing today, Grown. She received her Bachelor of Arts in Film from Howard University, her Master of Arts in Media Studies from the New School, and has over a decade in TV and film experience. The Brooklyn native is a lover of naps, cookie dough, and beaches. So I feel like we would be best friends. Grown is the story of Enchanted, who is dazzled by Corey's luxurious life, but soon her dream turns into a nightmare. Behind Corey's charm and star power hides a dark side, one that wants to control her every move with rage and consequences. Except for now he's dead and the police are at the door. So who killed Corey Fields? All signs point to Enchanted. Before we dive into the nitty-gritty, we got to start with our star rating. So what did everybody rate it? I'll go ahead and say my rating first. I rated it, because I'm using Storygraph and I feel more comfortable with half-star ratings now. That's a new thing for me.
Gwen, where's the old Gwen? Where did she go?
The old Gwen has left the building.
The old Gwen can't come to the phone right now.
So I rated...
dead.
Go ahead, just put me on plastic egg, Jacqueline. First, I'm being harsher with my star ratings, and now I'm doing half-star ratings. It's something new. 2021 is like a whole new Gwen. You just didn't even know. So, now that I'm more comfortable with star ratings, I rated it 3.5 stars, but I want you to keep in mind that I'm not the target audience of the book, and that I believe young adults, like ages 12 to 18, should 100% pick up this book. All right, what about you, Jessie? What did you rate it?
So it's kind of funny. I actually decided to stop doing half-star ratings.
The opposite.
So I think it's funny how you went back to half-star ratings, but I actually gave it 3 stars. And again, like you said, I'm not the targeted audience, and I typically don't read young adult, but I 100% agree with you with that age range. This is something I feel like young adults should be reading.
All right.
Wow.
And Jacqueline?
I am very surprised because I thought I was going to have the lower rating. I thought both of you guys would have rated it higher than that. And I went with a 4-star rating. And well, so yeah, the reason that I went with 4-star, because I was really debating on 4 or 4.5, but there were some issues that I did have with the book, more in like the writing style, not necessarily like the story. But the reason why I felt like it definitely needed to be a 4-star, even though I'm not the target audience, I felt like there were so many important topics that were talked about, and that's something that I really love about Tiffany D. Jackson, because I've read one of her other books, and for her, I think she's my favorite young adult author because I don't really love young adult, but she just does her young adult novels so well with having very hard topics, very important discussions in them. So I think that she deserved the higher rating from me, even though I am obviously not a young adult.
So who would we recommend this book to? I say YA readers looking for hard-hitting topics, specifically the Me Too movement, or books with darker topics that have the music industry in them. And also, like, if you're a fan of Tiffany D. Jackson, of course, you need to pick up this one too.
Yeah, so I definitely think that like all young teens should read this, just because it really showed how easily it is to be brainwashed or to get into a really bad situation very quickly, even when you don't think that you're being put in that situation. So it would really make young kids that think that they do want to be grown, make them really think before they just kind of say yes to a lot of things or do what other people tell them to do.
And what about you, Jessie? Who do you think should read this book?
I kind of wish my younger self in my senior year of high school would have read this book, because I kind of was in a very similar situation. Obviously, I wasn't trying to become a singer, but I was in a relationship where it was very controlling, and it made me feel like I was the one that was in the wrong, when really that's the complete opposite. So I kind of wish like teenagers moving into adulthood would read this a little bit more, to kind of know like relationships can be toxic, especially when you're still young and still growing into adulthood, and that you can be persuaded that things are wrong or things that are right as well.
That's a really good answer.
I agree with you a lot.
So one of our listeners on Instagram at Stelly Slater asked, what's the genre? And I feel like this is one of those books that actually is like a whole bunch of different things mixed into one. But if I had to like sum it up, I would say psychological fiction with a dash of mystery. What do you guys think?
So I actually did look up the genres, and I don't agree with putting it in the thriller category, because that's one of the genres that it's in. I wrote it down in my bullet journal as contemporary mystery. Obviously it's young adult, so I kind of group that in something separate, but it's definitely mostly contemporary with the hard-hitting topics, and then there's a little bit of mystery, but it's definitely not a thriller, so do not go in thinking it's a thriller.
Right. What about you, Jessie? What do you think of that?
I completely agree too. I'll be honest, when you guys asked me to read this book, I hadn't really looked into it that much, and then I read the synopsis. I was like, oh, a YA thriller, this sounds really good. But I did not get the thriller aspects as well. I will agree mystery is one of them, but I feel like it's more young adult, coming of age, contemporary more than anything.
Yeah, coming of age, that's another good one. Yeah. So has anyone read any other books by this author, and will this author be on your radar moving forward?
I've read Allegedly, which was awesome. I rated it 4.5 stars. That one actually is a lot more thriller aspect, and I think the synopsis says something about how it is almost like Orange is the New Black, and it really does. It has those vibes a lot. So I really loved that. So this is my second read by Tiffany D. Jackson, but I have heard that Monday's Not Coming is so good, and I heard there's like a really big plot twist in there, so that's gonna be my next book by her. Like, I cannot wait. I really want to read it very soon.
What about you, Jessie?
Allegedly sounds really interesting as well, because I do like Orange is the New Black as well, and then I heard Jacqueline talk about it on a few of her videos as well in the podcast. But the 2021 release for Smoke actually sounds really good, because I like the whole like Haunting of Hill House vibes to it as well. And then also Monday's Not Coming. I've heard a lot of hype around that too as well.
Yeah, I didn't realize there was a new release coming out.
Yeah, the one that sounds the most interesting to me is her upcoming 2021 release, White Smoke. It's pitched as Get Out meets The Haunting of Hill House. It's about a girl and her blended family who move into a newly renovated, picture-perfect home in a dilapidated Midwestern city and are haunted by what she thinks is ghosts, but it might be far worse.
Wow, that sounds awesome. That's so cool that she's kind of like getting into a little bit of horror too.
So I don't know exactly what genre this falls under, but just that brief synopsis that I saw, because it was actually originally called Smoke. Like, I saw it as Smoke, but then more information came out about it, and it's called White Smoke. So that one's definitely on my radar. It just sounds like, what's it going to be? It's like maybe multiple genres kind of mixed into one. So I'm really interested in that one.
That sounds so good. I'm going to have to put that on my list. Now it's time for some spoilers. We're going to be chatting about the characters and the plot. If you've read the book and are here for the discussion, stay tuned. But if you need to exit out and save this episode for when you have read the book, now is the time to do that. Let's start with the characters. Are there any characters you really liked?
Enchanted, there's a sweet, wholesome side to her, and I really had sympathy for her and the situation that she was in. I also really liked Enchanted's parents and her siblings. I really liked that family dynamic. And I also loved Nicole, the air stewardess. Thank God for people like her. I know she had like a 2-line little like thing. It was like a brief little flash in the pan, but like I was like, yes, Nicole. But anyway, but with that being said, Enchanted's portrayal was a bit uneven to me. We're told that she's like super mature for her age, but I also saw like a lot of naive sides to her as well. And it just made me not know, like, is she mature or is she like this naive young girl still? So there was a time where it became unbelievable to me when she had that encounter with Creighton, and that was on page like 66, 67. She was not taking it. The quote is, standing bone straight, I make my voice like steel as something unfurls inside me. I won't let this asshole attack me. I won't let my little sister see this. So she's being attacked by that guy and she's thinking like something bad's gonna happen. And she like, she says, no, like this isn't happening. So I just didn't understand why she couldn't have that same mindset with Corey and the things that he was doing to her. So I was kind of getting like this uneven portrayal of her character. Also, I know the story wasn't the focusing on the family as much, of course, as it was Enchanted, since the whole book was from Enchanted's POV. But there were times when the parents were trying to reach Enchanted over the phone or in person, and instead of showing us like a little bit of their journey to save their daughter, they didn't. It stuck to Enchanted's POV, where I think the narrative could have benefited from the perspective of people who love you no matter what, and they're concerned and they're trying to save you when things don't seem on the up and up. I know that many victims, like in Enchanted's place, feel like they're alone, and it does focus on that a little bit later on, like towards the end of the book. But I think adding a bit more about her parents during the events that were happening would have helped. Like, were they missing her? What made them think that something wasn't right? And I know like we got like they called or, they showed up, but like I just wanted a little bit more to show that even though she thought she was alone, that she really wasn't alone.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you with that aspect. I think it would have been nice to kind of like see what played out with her parents trying to reach her, because I felt kind of a little confused at that part. Just because there was like so many phone calls and so many voicemails. But when you talk about Enchanted being like mature, but then being upset that she was naive, from my own personal experience, and that's one of the things I really liked, is that she was a big sister to a lot of what she called the littles. I thought that was so cute. But I am also a big sister to a lot of little kids. And when you grow up in a situation like that, like you are very mature in that aspect, because like you know how to, like take care of your siblings. But I know that she wasn't homeschooled her whole life, and I was, but I was so naive to everything that happened outside of the house. So I was like super, super mature, but then also still very naive for issues like this. And so I also, when I was 18, was in a very bad relationship just like her. And I guess it's because when you grow up in a family and you're taking care of them, you still want to take care of this person that you think that you're in love with. And so even though they are threatening other things or doing things to you, you are just like, well, no, like I have to take care of them. Like that's what I'm doing. So I actually think that was a true portrayal of how someone could be, just because of my own experience with that.
I do think it was a true portrayal, but it just didn't make sense how she could see that guy Creighton was like not a good guy and he was going to do something to harm her, and she was able to like immediately put a stop to it. Like it was so quick. Like she was just like, nuh-uh, not gonna happen.
But that's because she wasn't in a relationship with that guy yet.
I know, but like I don't know, I just wish, like I guess I'm just wishing that she could like do it to him, because Corey was an a-hole.
Also, she wasn't trying to get famous out of that relationship versus with Corey,
I guess. All right, so any favorite characters, Jessie? As some of you know, I use Anchor to host my podcast, and I couldn't be more pleased with their service. It made it super easy to go from being a beginner that had no idea what in the world I was doing to someone that still has no idea what I'm doing, but it looks like I do because Anchor does all of the hard work for me. If you haven't heard about Anchor by Spotify, let me give you a rundown. Basically, it's the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need all in one place, and here's how it works. Anchor lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer. So no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating today. Then you can distribute your podcast to the most popular listening platforms, including Spotify, with a single tap. Anchor is also the only place you can publish video podcasts to Spotify. With Anchor, creators can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads like this one and podcast subscriptions. You want to hear the best part? Anchor is totally free. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Honestly, I would say the parents over everything, because I felt like I can honestly feel like their fear and their love for their child as well. And again, like you said, I felt like Enchanted was a little uneven at times. But again, I guess being in love and also having that strive to like get into the music industry was a key factor into it. But I didn't really have anyone in particular besides the parents. I did like the sister as well, and I liked the best friend in the beginning part of the story.
So which characters did you guys not like?
Obviously, Corey. Obviously.
Yes.
I would have murdered him for everybody.
But more than that, I was so outraged about all of the other adults who knew what was happening, or they had an idea of what was happening, and they did nothing. Nothing to stop it. They didn't report them. They didn't help Enchanted. Even the police were dismissing their concerns. That was the most like outrage. Like, obviously Corey was the antagonist. Like, we're supposed to hate him. But it was all the other people that I was just like, and this is why this continues to happen.
I agree with you, obviously. Like, I really disliked Corey a lot. And yeah, pretty much everybody, there was just so many people I just disliked.
So you're like, pretty much everybody.
Just everybody. Yeah.
Yeah. I also didn't like, what was her name? Jessica, the assistant to Corey. I really didn't like her because she obviously knew what was going on. And then more things happened with her than what it appeared in the beginning as well. But yeah, obviously Corey, terrible person, and anyone that associates with him.
Yeah, good point. So what about this setting? Do we think that the setting affected the story in any way? I know it starts like in the suburbs, but she's on the road with Corey a lot, and they were bouncing around to different cities and stuff like that.
For me, I guess I just don't really like look at the setting. I'm always just for plots and not really descriptions. So that literally has nothing for me.
One setting that I did like, even though it turned out pretty bad, was the whole Disneyland scene that Corey took her on. I felt like that was really special, and I was like, okay, he does have a softer side, but obviously he's just like a light switch and can flip on and off at any time.
Yeah, so as Enchanted follows Corey's from show to show and city to city, I think it highlighted that it can happen anywhere, and even when your parents are concerned, even when they think that they know where you are and what's going on, like, it's happening everywhere. So we always have to be on our game.
Exactly.
So this is a big one. What did you guys think about the plot and the pacing of the plot?
Who wants to tackle it first?
I really liked the plot for the most part. I do know I went into it thinking it was more of a thriller than anything. But to be honest, the whole flash forward to present day of like her finding out that something terrible has happened, the police are banging on the door. Throughout the whole story, I really didn't care about the actual mystery part of it, but I really enjoyed the actual relationship part of it, like, I mean, I didn't want that to happen to her, obviously, but I did like seeing how it unfolded. It kind of gave me, I don't know, the only reference I could think of is like the night swim of like, you know, like that type of culture, how women can just be perceived as like, oh, they're making it up to get money or attention or because they broke up with a guy. So I really liked that hard-hitting topic, kind of like the night swim. But as far as the mystery, it was not my favorite part. But I did think the pacing was really, really good. I flew through that book within like 2 days.
Yeah, I definitely did too. I thought the book had major potential. The subject matter is important, victim blaming and highlighting the injustice that so many victims face, especially Black women. It's something that we as a society need to address, but the author didn't know what she wanted this book to be, I felt like. I think the book had too much to accomplish, like the abuse storyline, the murder storyline, and the social commentary. And these aspects weren't well balanced. And I didn't think that there was enough, even though it was like a chunkier book, I don't think that there was enough room to do all that justice. And I think this falls back to all the books that I've been reading that just, it's like they're tackling important things, but they're just not like giving them room to breathe, and they're putting like too much into it. So there wasn't enough emphasis on how Black victims get no support. There needed to be more discussions about the police officers dismissing the concerns. It was easy to see as the reader, and it was pointed out in text, that if a white person had come forward with accusations, things would have been very different. However, I feel like we didn't have those more in-depth discussions as much as they were like random plot points that confused me more than like helped the plot along. And there were some unanswered questions that could have really driven the point home to readers about grooming and how young girls can so easily be preyed upon. So one thing that it didn't answer is, why does Enchanted still love Corey? What were her motivations for going back to him? And the other thing that you briefly mentioned, Jessie, is her friend Gab. I still couldn't get my mind around the whole Gab thing, specifically the name thing. It was literally driving me crazy. And the mental illness representation was also glossed over several times with Enchanted and even her grandmother. I felt like the author tried to shove all that stuff into a place that was already crowded, and it could have been left out, because I feel like she didn't, like, don't bring up mental illness unless you're going to take care of it, in my opinion. Right. And the whole back and forth with the Gab name, it was just like, yes, no, yes, no.
I was going to say is I completely agree with you. I felt like the whole friend part honestly could have been taken out, or it should have been emphasized a little bit more.
Yeah, so I have that written down for why I rated it the 4 stars, is the like back and forth on whether or not Enchanted was like delusional or not delusional. I thought that didn't need to be in there. And then honestly, I had listened to most of this book on audio, and I had listened to like 50% of it, and I was like, I don't even like, I feel like everyone says that this book has such important topics, but I'm not seeing it. I don't know what's going on. I was very confused. So I went ahead and just restarted the whole book again. And since I already had listened to half of the story, when I went back and started it and it had that like flash forward or present day or whatever, I knew who Corey was, and I knew kind of what was going on. So I felt like I like understood or saw a lot more than once I restarted it. It was almost like rereading it, I guess. I do think that helped with me just really understanding then all of the issues that were being brought up, because I was like, oh, I understand what's going on. A lot of times when books could just kind of like do those weird flashback things and start with one thing and you've no clue like what even it's talking about or who the characters are, it confuses me for so long.
Yeah, it drops you in the middle of the story and you're like, where am I? What's going on? Instead of it being a more linear timeline, it just drops you in the middle of the action, basically towards the end of what the book's really going to talk about. And then it starts the story, and then it does pick up and go into different like timelines and stuff like that. So
yeah. And I do think that like I also, like you, Jessie, thought that I was going into a YA thriller. So once I realized that this was definitely just a book more about like the hard-hitting topics, because when I had first gotten to that 50%, I was like, there's nothing happening. Like, where's the thriller? Like, what's going on? So I was focusing on the mystery and thriller aspect, and I think that's why initially I really didn't like the book. And then I went back and I was like, okay, I need to focus instead on something else, because obviously I know that there's no thriller, 50% of the way through. So then that's when I realized, I started noticing the grooming, and I started noticing Corey changing into a different character and everything that was happening with Enchanted. So I think that was better for me to go back and reread it, but I really think that it was marketed wrong, which is one of my reasons that I gave it less stars, because I hate when books are marketed wrong. I think it's just, it's so
when you go into
not great.
a book expecting one thing, like you said, you're waiting for the thrilling thing, that you're almost like glossing over the other important details because you're like, where's the thriller? Where's the thriller? Where's the thriller? So that does.
And that's what I was doing, but it needs like that whole thriller aspect just needs to come out, and it just needs to be like a very important topic story. Like I loved, honestly, I don't know if we're going to get into this later, but like I'll just talk about it now while I'm thinking about it. After reading this and writing my review, I realized that things that I've said before about all the ugly and wonderful things kind of got brought back up in this book. And that's the fact that this whole book is about Enchanted and her looking like an adult and being a little bit more mature and being grown, and how that doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter what you look like. An older man should not be like taking advantage of a younger child, and people shouldn't be expecting her to know, oh, why did you get in that relationship, or why are you letting him do that? Like, she's still a child. And so I know I've said before, even on the podcast, like with all the ugly and wonderful things, like I know that character didn't look old, but like myself, when I was like 14 and 15, I looked like an adult. But that's like, that shouldn't be an excuse. Like, that's not okay. It's still, child abuse or child pornography, whether or not they look like they're 25 or whether they're 14. And so I did really like that topic that was brought up in here, and you kind of see that like going through the story. But I thought I should mention that because in case anyone was upset that I said about all the ugly and wonderful things.
Mentioning that, highlighting some of the themes and possible trigger warnings: rape, coercion, and assault when it comes to Black girls and women, emotional abuse, physical abuse, kidnapping, and of course addiction to opioids. So overall, how is the writing for you guys? Just the writing itself, not necessarily the story.
I like the writing. I think that's why I just really like Tiffany D. Jackson as a young adult writer. I think that she does really well. I think it doesn't feel very YA, and she's just a really good storyteller, because there's just something about her books that I love way more than other young adult books. And I feel like it's like she almost treats her readers as if they are a little bit more mature, and is like, here, I'm gonna, teach you about these topics. Whereas other young adult books, I don't know, it just like, they're just really immature to me when I read them. So
yeah, I agree with you. This one, although it did seem young adult, I felt like the actual writing wasn't young adult. Like, I felt like I could relate to it as an adult, or if I was like, 15, 16, 17 years old as well.
I think I touched on a few things already, but it was a bit all over the place for me. I did like it, but I don't want to not say the negative aspects of how I felt about it. And I feel like because it was all over the place a little bit, that's why it suffered. That's why I couldn't give it more than like the 3.5 stars. Not because the writing was horrible, but it was the structure and what the author tried to accomplish. Like I said, I just think all the topics that she tried to tackle, it was too overwhelming. And that I don't think enough things had the finality that they could have had if she would have given those themes and topics more room to breathe. Instead, she kept throwing in like the mental illness and things like this. And I'm like, but let's just talk about who killed Corey, and like, is Enchanted okay? And,
I'm wondering if she did that though, where she kind of like just very lightly touched based on things because it's a young adult novel. So if it was an adult novel, maybe she would have dove deeper into everything.
Then she doesn't need to bring it up at all. Because to me, leaving something like...
But a lot of things wouldn't have happened.
Well, the mental illness thing, let's just take that as an example. She didn't need to have that in there. If she literally would have taken that out of the storyline, it wouldn't have changed anything. It would have made it a little bit clearer that she wasn't delusional, and that, the things that... Like, even there was that part where she didn't even know, like, I mean, I guess I'll get into that when we talk about the ending.
I think she had the mental illness thing in there as a plot twist. Like,
and I hate that.
Is this happening? And if, right. But that's the problem with it being marketed as a thriller. If she would have taken that out, like, I'm not sure exactly how it works when people, like, write books, but I'm wondering if they were like, hey, you need to write a thriller. And she was like, oh, I want to write like an own voices and have some hard hitting topics. So I'm wondering if that's why a lot of things were jumbled together. Yeah. But I feel like that's why, is because she needed those plot twists, but she was also trying to tell an important story.
Yeah, I mean, she definitely did tell a very important story. And I love what Jessie touched on in the beginning when I asked, like, who did she recommend this book to? And yeah, I mean, because I've definitely been in crappy situations with men that, looking back, I'm like, wow, what an idiot I was. And I think that if you hear about, because in that moment you feel alone, like there's nothing you can do and it's only you. And that goes back to what I said about the parents. I feel that I wish they would have showed that like there were people out there trying to help her, trying to get to her. And that would have just...
Yeah, and a part that really pisses me off is when Corey was like, oh, well, if you leave me, like, I'm going to commit suicide. Because I literally, that's what my first boyfriend would do. He was like, oh, I'm going to commit suicide. And, like, when you're that young, you literally, like, you just don't see what's actually going on. And you're like, oh, my gosh, like, I would never want this to happen. So you stay for all these wrong reasons. And it's so controlling of them to do that to you.
Yeah, it's just, there's so many, like, important things. I just wish that, like, the mental illness, I guess, and then the Gabby name thing, or the Gab, whatever her name was. But those two things just didn't need to be in there. And it almost could have, like, and then if the novel was the same length, she could have had other time for like more details, a better finality of those topics. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being picky. I mean, we're talking about me here. So what about the ending though? Personally, I'm glad it came full circle, but I still had unanswered questions. Was Corey really at the places that Enchanted claimed she saw him? I don't remember if it was ever like proven, if it was a hallucination or what. And then also the fact that she stabbed Corey after Richie did. I needed that to be a little bit clearer, but I did whoop whoop when I read that line. Like, that right there is some revenge.
Yeah, I didn't like the ending, which is why, like, that's another reason why I gave it 4 and not 5 stars. Because I didn't like, I don't know. Sometimes, like, there's so many different ways. Like, sometimes I like open-ended, not clear endings. It has to just be the right moment and the right book. And I felt like this is the type of book that didn't need an unclear ending. Like, I wanted to know exactly. And yeah, so I don't know. And then the whole, like, the thing I didn't like was the whole beet juice, like, blood thing. And then she, like, drank beet juice.
What was that all about?
Like, what is that?
Yeah, I felt like that was so weird, but I was like, maybe just because I don't drink beet juice.
I was like, maybe I just don't get it.
I was like, whatever helps you cope, so. But yeah, I felt like the ending, I don't know, I felt like it was a little rushed, but I think it's because she just had like a set deadline before she had to like turn herself in. So I felt like it was like a little bit all over the place. And again, I was happy when we found out that she did stab him, but I felt like it could have been a little bit more clear.
Yeah, almost it goes back to that hallucination thing and that mental illness thing. Like, so did she think that she stabbed him and she really didn't? Or did she? Or, yeah, I just needed a little bit more time on that.
I'm wondering if, we're just looking at the book in the wrong way. Like, we read thrillers.
Adult
and
thrillers.
I usually really like realistic type of things to be like, okay, this is the person that stabbed and this is the and I think that we're almost looking at this because of it being marketed differently. We're like picking and choosing and stuff on like, this is a thriller. Did this happen? Who killed who? Why was all this other stuff in it? And I almost feel like
that's not the point.
It's not the point, right? So it's not the point of who killed Corey or all of the other mystery aspects and who Gabrielle is and all that kind of stuff. It's the fact that all of this was happening and we were supposed to be like paying attention to like the deeper meaning of it.
Yeah, I guess the other thing that I'll mention before we move on to some other things is I highlighted so much in this book, and I think what made it so strong for the themes and topics that it did discuss is that it was so clear to us that Corey was a douchebag and that Enchanted should have just run for her life from the very beginning. and also maybe I'm just an adult and I've lived through things like that and I'm able to pick it out easier. But like just everything, the way he would talk to her, the way he was controlling her, and just it was from the very beginning, the very first time he brought her in the studio and he was like, it gets hot in here. You need to wear something to show off those curves. And I was just like, what? Like, why? And I just felt so bad because I just wanted her to have her dream, you know, and I could, she was just willing to sacrifice everything. I just want to make a record. And it was just so heartbreaking.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think that she had a boyfriend before that. Like, was that her first boyfriend? So when you grow up, I don't know, this is just my own experience. When you grow up and you're like, yeah, homeschool experience. When you grow up, like, just taking care of your siblings and stuff, like the first time that someone is like showing you interest,
and he's famous, and in this case,
and he's famous, and I always usually liked older men too, and so when someone is like paying attention,
okay, hold up, I have to interject.
Really of the...
I like older men, and aren't you older than your husband?
Yeah, but most of the people I dated were always a lot older
That's
than me.
So funny. I was just thinking, you're like, yeah, I used to date a lot older, and I'm like, but you married younger. You go, girl.
Yeah. No, it was just like, I guess it was because I felt like I was like, it was kind of like taboo, breaking the rules. I mean, those are the type of books I like too. But yes, my husband is 2.5 years younger than me.
You'd be crazy if he was like 10
and I
years
don't like that I'm going to be hitting the milestones first, okay?
He loves it,
Don't
though.
like that. Yeah, I feel like when someone is like showing you that first attention, you're not thinking about the bad things. Yeah. You're not thinking like, oh, well, why is he saying it's hot in here? You're like, ooh, wow, like, you think I have curves? Like, yeah,
I know, but
you know,
it just,
so like,
to me as the reader, I was just fuming. I was like, no, Enchanted, wear an extra sweater. Like,
it also, I think, depends on who she is as a person. Like, I'm a people pleaser, and it seems like that's how she kind of was too. So she doesn't want to make him mad. She wants to do everything that he says. She kind of follows the rules. And so that's the problem. Like, I think that certain people also prey on the people that are like this, and that is a problem.
And, like, another thing, like, going back to, like, him asking her to show off her curves, I didn't like the fact that he was making, like, he didn't like her hair being shaved.
I know.
That he was like, oh, you need to have long hair, you need to wear tighter clothes, you need to lose weight. And it was just like, I was just like, this woman sounds really beautiful, like, and she's confident, you know, because she was a swimmer as well, so she had to be in great shape to begin with. She also embraced having short hair, and, like, I felt like it was very sweet that her father also like, shaved her head for her on a regular basis.
Yeah, that was so cute.
And then just to have some older man who gives you attention and says he loves you to, like, completely change you, I was fuming at that too.
Yeah. Oh, gosh, there's so many things. It just makes me so upset because I just want to save her. You know, like, I want to save all the girls out there that are dealing with this because, like, I mean, yeah. It happens, and he's famous, and she wants an album. And plus, he was lying and saying, like, I'm sending back money for your parents to, you know, help pay the bills because her father had lost his job. And so he was supposedly sending money back to help so they could be financially secure. And so her sister could still go to the school and stuff like that. Of course, that was all a lie, but...
Yeah, one thing I was a little upset with Enchanted for was the fact that when Corey was like lying about her parents and saying, you know, oh, well, your parents are just looking for money and, you know, all that kind of stuff, I feel like she shouldn't have believed him with that. Like, she should have been like, well, no, that's not how my parents are. So I was a little upset that she didn't, like, believe in herself with her own, like, knowing who her parents are, you know what I mean?
I think she did. I think in her, and this is goes back to what I was saying, like, about Enchanted, about her, like, she was so unbalanced, is because I think she did know. I think in the back of her head, she's like, that doesn't sound like my parents. But she was so scared of Corey and he kept promising, I'm going to help you get your solo career started. I'm going to help you get your solo career started. And I remember there was a certain point, like, obviously this wasn't the point of the story, but I was like, after all that, he never helped her make an album or get her song out. I was like, Just douchebag from the word go. Like, oh my goodness.
Well, there was also comments that he made about her older but yet younger sister as well, and she was like, like, don't, like, leave her alone, keep her out of this, blah 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 blah. So I feel like she was also agreeing to everything to protect her as well.
So anything else that you guys wanted to share? I don't have any specific questions set aside. I don't have any quotes or passages. Does anybody else?
Well, first I wanted to talk about how, like, this is an own voices book. So Tiffany, I think it was at the end, like the epilogue or something. I was just listening to the audio, so I don't remember what it was called, but like author's note, I guess. And she, even though this isn't like actually portraying her life, like, she is a Black woman and she also was sexually abused at, like, during her teen years as well. So I think that also some of this kind of, like, well, not kind of, it actually did come from her own experience, whether or not the whole storyline did. But I couldn't understand there for a while, like, what the title meant as grown, until I got to, like, the one quote where it says, "Not looking their age doesn't change their age." And so it's talking all about how young brown and Black girls are always forced into maturity, mainly because they look older, and how adults label them as grown to dismiss the ways that the children can suffer from, adults doing these things to them. So I just thought that was, like, really important, and kind of like, my husband and I, anytime we watch a movie and we hear, like, the movie title in there, we're always like, movie title, like, we say it really fast. So that's how I feel like with books, like the cover and then the actual title of the book. When I get to that point where I'm like, oh, that's what the cover is, or that's what the title means, that's always, like, a pretty important part to me.
I didn't have any quotes as well. I tried to, like, annotate this book, which I don't normally do, but I didn't succeed very well. So I really did like the one that Jackie said.
Yeah, I don't have any specific quotes or passages, but I loved the themes of the ocean and water and Ariel and jellyfish and mermaids throughout the story. It made it all feel connected, even though it was like the timeline was jumping around and the themes were jumping around. I felt like through it all, she had these great themes of, like, under the water and all the things that I said. And I was like, does she write poetry? She should, because when I'm talking about poetry, the themes and, like, this is what I'm talking about. You need one universal theme, and even, like, the waves and the ripple and, just every once in a while she would, like, break out into these other things and talk about it, and I could feel it. I was like, I know exactly what she's saying, because the imagery was the same throughout. So my poetry loving heart was so freaking happy.
That's funny, because I don't even know what you're talking about. My mind must have been like, description, let's stop listening. Like, no,
Did you pick up on that, Jessie?
I definitely don't pay attention to that.
I didn't until you said something. I was like, okay, I can kind of remember a little bit, and that may be also what, because she was a swimmer too, and also Corey couldn't swim. So I get it now, but I didn't pick it up when I first read it.
One more final thought I think that I have is the fact that Tiffany showed very well how sexualization of young girls can happen to anyone, because Enchanted did have a 2-parent household and, like, a loving family. And so literally it can happen to anyone. It's not just like, when people say, like, oh, well, she has daddy issues, or, just things like that.
The other thing is, like, going back to, like, how Corey wanted to, like, change her appearance. I felt like him, as well as, like, everyone else, kept, like, referencing how, like, women should look like Beyonce versus being their true selves. And I just don't feel like that's true. I feel like you should be original and not have to fit into someone's equation or change yourself to be something else.
That is important. And unfortunately, like, with social media and stuff, like, that is just something that always happens. I mean, people are, oh, well, you have to be skinny, or your hair has to be long, or, just anything like that. Right now, the generation's like, you need to have a middle part, all that kind of stuff. So
within the first 50 pages or so, I thought that Jackson was literally using the most well-known popular Black artists over and over, like Aretha Franklin, Patti LaBelle, Whitney Houston, Beyonce. And yeah, they're amazing artists and all that. But like, it just felt so repetitive. I mean, everybody knows who Aretha Franklin is. A Natural Woman, Respect, Amazing Grace, Rocksteady, Patti LaBelle, the diva of soul and R&B, Whitney Houston, may God rest her soul. And like, obviously Beyonce and stuff. But like, obviously the point of the story was not to give Black artist recommendations, but it would have been cool if it did. And considering that the author was Black, like, I'm sure she listens to a lot of Black artists, and it would have been cool, like, if she didn't use like the ones that books always use. So that's just something that it just got a little repetitive for me because it was like the same artist being named over and over and over again.
I think, though, that's because this book is written in this generation for younger people. So, like, when she brought up Aretha Franklin, Enchanted goes to an all-white school, and, like, they didn't even know who Aretha Franklin was. And I think kids nowadays, like, they don't know any of those names. So that was, like, her name dropping. I mean, okay, they know Beyonce.
But was it for white people, or was it for Black people, or was it for all people that she was doing that?
I think it's for everybody, since this book is for everybody.
No, I disagree. I think that she was naming those really popular Black artists for white readers, because I think that Black people reading this book 100% know those names. 100%.
That's true. I guess if your like family listens to it, but like I know white people that don't even know like who the Beatles are. And like, so right. I think that it could be for anybody, because that doesn't necessarily mean
who white
that
people,
your
you
parents
know, don't know who the Beatles are.
Literally the kids nowadays. So that's what I'm saying. It's a generation thing. And that's why, I work with 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds. They don't know who the Beatles are. They don't know who the Beach Boys are. Like, they literally don't know anything that's like before 10 years ago.
But these names are, I don't know.
The Beatles are pretty big. I mean,
I think if I quizzed 100 Black young adults ages 12 to 18, 12, okay, to 18, and I said, do you know who Beyonce is?
Well, they're going to know Beyonce because she's a little bit more relevant.
Whitney Houston. If I started singing her song, and I can't sing, but if I started humming a tune to one of her songs,
I bet if you asked them who Megan Thee Stallion is, they would know.
But the thing is I just wish that they would have named a little bit more obscure names. I'm saying it could have been like a positive, you know, it could have been for me, since I'm old, give me something new.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, she did mention that like she listened to the classical music with her grandmother. Mm-hmm. So that is another reason why she mentioned classical Black artists.
I know, but I'm like, there's more. There's more. Like, these names are like the top of the top. That's what I was thinking. Like, everybody knows Whitney Houston. Everybody knows Patti LaBelle. Everybody knows Aretha Franklin. Like, she could have named a little bit less obscure things. In my opinion. But, like, you know, I don't know. I don't know what the cool kids know and what they don't know now. I'm sorry. But my most exciting thing is to always pair a signature cocktail with the book. And I came up with the perfect one. It's called the Yellowhammer Slammer, and it's well known at the University of Alabama. And no tailgate is complete without this vivid yellow cocktail, and it's fruity and it's full of alcohol. So to make this signature cocktail, again, it's called the Yellowhammer Slammer. It has 1 ounce of vodka, 1 ounce of light rum, 1 ounce of amaretto, 2 ounces of orange juice, 2 ounces of pineapple juice, and you can use like a cherry to garnish, and you just mix the vodka, rum, amaretto together, and then you add the juices and you stir it well to combine. You pour it in a glass with ice, garnish with your cherry, and serve.
That sounds really good.
It sounds really good, but I've heard that these can go really bad. But that's kind of why I chose it, because obviously I wanted a yellow cocktail to pair with it because of the vivid yellow color of the cover of the book. And also, like, I've heard that this can get really out of hand because it's so fruity that you could just like whip through these, but then there's just lots of alcohol, so it can go really, really wrong. Kind of how things did for Enchanted. So I thought it was like the perfect cocktail for this book.
We hope you enjoyed the book discussion of Grown by Tiffany D. Jackson. Don't forget the author's website, and a link to purchase a copy of the book will be in the details of today's episode.
If you'd like to suggest a book for us to discuss or have a topic for a future episode, email us at talkbookishpodcast@gmail.com or message us on Instagram at talkbookishpodcast. There's also a voice message feature built into the Anchor app that allows you to leave us messages right from your phone. We'd love to start incorporating your messages into our episodes.
Thank you so much for joining us for today's episode, Jessie. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you for having me. So much fun.
Again, make sure you check out the show notes. There's a lot of information there, including links to Jessie's social media accounts and our signature cocktail we paired with the book. And until next time, happy reading!